welcome to another week of A Sip of Knowledge with Marty Duffy, Liz Rhoades, and Lou Bryson, as always. Plus, this week we have special guests, Dan and Charlie Garrison from Garrison Brothers Distillery. I'll let your host give a more lengthy introduction to them in just a moment. Real quick before we get started, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvy.co. As always, just want to point out a couple of different ways that you can interact with your hosts and their guests throughout the show today. On your right, as I see some of you have already discovered, there is a chat box. So feel free to just say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. I see we already have folks from South Africa, Louisville, North Carolina. So always great to see people from all over the place. If you have a question at any point during the show, there's another little button at the bottom of the screen that says ask a question. So just hit that button, type your question in there. I'll be keeping an eye out for those throughout the show today. And last but not least, feel free to invite your friends to join us. There's a share button at the top that makes it really easy to do that. But with all that said, Marty, Liz, Lou, I'll turn things over to your care now.
Thanks, Will. You're the best. And by the way, to answer your question, yes, if you put a Superman outfit on, you can leap off tall buildings in a single bound. Once. Then afterwards, not so good. Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Duffy. I'm a former senior master of whiskey for Diageo. And then national brand representative for Benedictine French liqueur. That was 18 glorious years of my life I'll never get back. And then 8 years as co-producer of the Chicago Independent Spirit Expo. And for the last 7 years, almost coming up on an anniversary, 7 years as the this just looks like a pencil holder, but it's actually our mixer glass. The North brand representative for North America for Glencairn Crystal. Oh, all right, Rocky Rhoades, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Marty. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Hello, I'm Liz Rhoades, technical distiller and spirit consultant. Have just over a decade experience in alcoholic beverage, working across several different product types and substrates, including beer, rum, vodka. But hey, my particular favorite and expertise is, of course, in whiskey. I spent most of my career at a little mom and pop company known as Diageo, but am now currently founder and principal at Spirit Safe Consulting. Hey, want to learn more? Scroll down to the About the Host section. There's actually a link to my website, so click it. Check it out. Lou?
Thanks, Liz. Hi, everybody. Lou Bryson, whiskey writer. I'm plugging my book, Whiskey Masterclass. Ought to read it. Ought to get it. Buy several copies for your friends. I was a managing editor of Whiskey Advocate magazine for 20 years. Got to meet a lot of people in the world of whiskey and learn a lot, and just kept going. I am currently a senior drinks writer for the Daily Beast website, the award-winning Daily Beast website. And today's whiskey is the 2021-02 batch, the tag-along batch of Booker's. I got to say, I was just talking to my buddy Sam Komlenik, who is the copy editor still at Whiskey Advocate. We were drinking some of the Booker's over the weekend because that's what you do on the weekend, drink bourbon. Beam is just killing it lately. They're putting out some really nice stuff, and happy to be tasting this. So that's my whiskey for today, and off to you, Marty.
Thanks there, Lewis. Here's a little musical interlude from the A Sip of Knowledge singers. The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. Ha! Sorry, guys, we don't have much of a budget, so that's all you get.
The show always is.
It's a good thing that you guys are not from Ireland, or he'd start singing that freaking Danny Boy again.
Danny Boy, or the Mountain Dew.
Everything you've been saying, Marty, I just am dying to associate country songs with it. Your Superman comment, go listen to Guy Clark, his song about a cape. It's amazing.
Cape.
Right.
Country songs about capes.
Yep.
They'll sing about anything, any inanimate object. They'll sing
I'll
about it.
listen to anything by Guy Clark.
Yep.
All right, folks. This week we go down to the Lone Star State, the only state that was once a country all unto itself, and a beautiful sense of independence. I love going down to Texas. We're here with another thing I want to talk about later is the fact that there are a lot of brothers out there who have distilleries. And I find that fascinating. I mean, obviously, a lot of husband and wife couples, which usually are husband and wives, I guess. This week we have the Garrison Brothers, who have a really cool distillery down in High Texas that I've visited on a number of occasions and partaked in some of the whiskey down there after maybe a gunfight or two that I've gotten into.
Don't forget the rattlesnakes.
Yeah, and I made sure I drank that whiskey out of a dirty glass because that's just how I travel.
At what point does this get so cheesy that we have to abandon?
Reboot altogether.
Cheesy.
When you see Liz waving the grater around, that's when you'll know.
That's a sign. That's a cheese sign. So, yes, today we have Dan and Charlie Garrison of Garrison Brothers Distillery. Daniel, we'll start with you because you got the cowboy hat on. Sorry, Charlie. Right. I was expecting 2 cowboy hats, but...
So was I. I was kind of bummed.
Yeah. I was looking for one, but I only have one for my second birthday. And it's a little small.
He's going to go get one.
Oh, all right.
Challenge.
Don't you have a pork pie hat, Marty? I thought everybody in Chicago had to have a pork pie hat.
I do. So I have a stovepipe hat, from my Lincoln days.
I was out riding in the country here in Pennsylvania yesterday, and there were 25 Mennonite boys, all had pork pie hats. It was bizarre.
If this is all I needed to be the boss, hell, I would have put it on a long time ago.
Look at that. Damn.
That looks great. See, this is what you kind of picture.
Charlie's going first now. Is that it?
All right, so Dan, why don't we get to this? Why don't we find out, where'd you start off from? What got you in the whole idea of I'm gonna plop down a distillery in the middle of Texas and stop making me some Texas whiskey?
In the early '90s, Marty, I was going broke. I was a professional exotic dancer and just wasn't cutting it. It wasn't paying the bills, and so I had to do something rash. So
I know where you're coming from.
I did what every other Austinite did back in mid-1990s. I joined a technology company called Extraprise. We were building a software that ran internet websites like Amazon and eBay. Trading exchanges is what they're called. And I worked for them from 95 until about 2001. And I was about ready to retire because the company was sold to a big California company for $178 million. And I had stock options in the business, and I was done. I was going to go buy a boat in the Caribbean and say, bye, honey, bye, kids. Y'all keep eating right and drinking lots of water, but I'm gone. That was the plan anyway. Didn't work out that way. In 2001, the largest trading network in the entire world, a company called Enron, went belly up. And I lost my job. We went bankrupt because Wall Street suddenly was not looking favorably at internet-based marketplaces like we were creating with our software. So I had to find something else to do. And a father of 2, flat broke, couldn't get a job. My wife had to take a job to support us for the time being. And I did what any responsible father of 2 would do in that situation. I went to the Kentucky Bourbon Trail to go get really drunk for 2 weeks. Huh. And I realized my love for bourbon wasn't, I've loved bourbon since I was 13 years old, good bourbon, but that opened my eyes to really good bourbon. That's the first time I had a glass of George T. Stagg. It's the first time I had a glass of Blanton's, was on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. I learned that Woodford Reserve is very similar to Old Forester in a lot of different ways. And so I learned some of the insights as to what really goes on in the bourbon industry. And at that time, there were only 9 bourbon whiskey makers in America. There were only 9 basic companies that ran the place. They owned multiple distilleries throughout Kentucky, but it was all done in Kentucky. And I said, this is bullshit. And I wrote a letter to a guy named Dave Bateman at the Tax and Trade Bureau, who was an analyst for them. And I said, Dave, I want to make bourbon whiskey in Texas. Can I do that legally? And he said, of course you can. Why would you think otherwise? And I got home that night. I remember sitting down and going, holy shit, I'm the only person in America who knows that bourbon can come from any state in America, not just Kentucky. And so I started borrowing money from anybody and everybody who would write me a check. And the next thing you know, I had a little piece of land out in the country that my mother-in-law bought. And I was out there nights and weekends distilling and learning to distill, learning how to mash in, learning how to cook mash, learning different water variables as to how the chemicals in the water, the minerals in the water could affect the mash top bill. And
wait, hang on a sec. Where were you learning that? Was this just hands-on experience learning it, or
this was in High Texas, just doing it myself?
Okay.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. I from 2003 or 2004 until 2007, I didn't have a federal permit to distill alcohol, so I may or may not have been distilling alcohol at the time. The statute of limitations is over, so I can talk about that today. But back then, it was a hell of a lot of fun. I was all on my own. I was drinking my own juice and drinking my own Kool-Aid and having a great time at it. And I tasted some in 2006 that I thought it was about a 6-month-old bourbon. It had only been aged 6 months. And I went, holy shit, this tastes like bean. And sure enough, 2 years later, it was pretty good. And we started selling our bourbon in 2010 through 3 liquor stores out of the Texas Hill Country. Today, we're in 40 states and 7 foreign countries. So it's been a great run. We love what we do. We've been profitable for 7 months in a row. Who would have thought?
Amazing.
Nice.
So life is good. I have the greatest job in the world. I get to drink good bourbon with new friends each day, and I get to know people like y'all. So I'm very lucky, very blessed.
Yeah, it's nothing. You're welcome.
A question there. Was there any particular distillery or bourbon that really inspired you when you were on the trip or from past experience?
This might piss off some of my friends. Okay, turn your phones off, gentlemen, ladies. But Buffalo Trace, from the day I met Elmer T. Lee, and Harlan Wheatley gave me a tour, a hard hat tour of the distillery, I made it, they were my target. They were my target. If I could make bourbon that was better than what Buffalo Trace was making, I was going to be someone on the map. And I had to make bourbon that was better than what Buffalo Trace was making because I'm coming from Texas. And everybody's going to question the validity of a bourbon from Texas back in those days. And they did. I got hate mail from Kentuckians saying, wow, you make bourbon in Texas. Every liquor store I walked into, hey, I'm Dan Garrison. So nice to meet you. This is a bottle of Garrison Brothers. Will you give it a try? And they'd go, you make bourbon in Texas? And I'd say, yes, I do. And they'd say, that's illegal. You can't do that. And and I'd walk out and walk away. And I'd come back a week later and try it again.
Now, so when did Charlie, when did you come into the act? If your brother's out there, he's out there by his lonesome, surrounded by rattlesnakes, out in the elements. And, there's no Charlie, there's no Frank James helping Jesse make the whiskey. Outlaws. That's what I'm thinking there.
I don't like to sweat and be dirty. And Dan spent a lot of time with a boat oar and a plastic bucket in an old barn sweating and being dirty. And he'd cook up a bunch of methanol and he'd say, man, you got to come down and try this. And I'd say, I don't think I do. I don't understand why I'd want to drink that yet. Let's see what you look like in another couple of years, and then we'll see.
Charlie,
the reality is that
I don't think I'm describing our bourbon as methanol is really good brand advertising.
early on, and you're learning.
Low risk. It's fine.
This could be called Garrison Brother by the end of the show.
Now. But
yeah.
So we Dan sent me a business plan. It was without question the worst business plan I've ever read in my entire life.
We are working it out here. This is good. It's like therapy.
I said, this is a terrible idea, and I need to be a part of it. So once he had enough bourbon to sell, I was happy to come in and try to help. So in 2013, he reached out and said, hey, man, I'm making some volume here. You want to help me try to sell this stuff? And by God, it's been just a an absolute blast.
Well, Charlie, what were you doing prior then to all this?
I got stupid lucky in a telecom business early in my career. And you know how everybody that works at giant corporations always says, screw this, one day I'm going to quit and open a little sub shop, but nobody's dumb enough to do it. I walked away from a very lucrative telecom career and opened a couple of sub shops called the Bad Donkey and tried to piss away my money as fast as a human could possibly do it. And so I was ripe for the picking. When Dan said, hey, look, I'll pay you in bourbon, I left my poor wife running the company, and I took off to Texas and started selling bourbon.
So Dan, what was this? What was the whiskey known as before you called the Garrison Brothers? Because it was just one Garrison for a while there.
So the little known story that we don't talk about a whole lot because it pains me is that I had an original partner in the business back in the day when I started. When he heard that I was going to do this, he said, I want in. I'm going to get out of my printing business. I want in. And he was my best friend at the time. And I said, all right, you come in, you handle the finance side, you raise the money for this offering. I'll be the marketing and the production and the distilling end of it. I'll get into the technology and the science part of it and do all the branding. And that was our agreement. And about 1 year into our relationship, we took a trip to Kentucky and we sat down with some very important people at a particular distillery who I probably can't name. They're very close friends to me to this day. But my partner asked if we could buy White Dog from them or if we could buy aged bourbon from them to give us a jump start to getting to market. And I couldn't believe that he asked the question in the meeting. And I immediately turned and looked at him, and I was just...
You didn't know he was going to ask that?
I didn't know he was going to ask that question.
Oh, my God.
And I wasn't asking that question. I was just there to learn how to make bourbon, and he asked that question. And as soon as I saw him ask that question, and as soon as I heard the response from the gentleman we were meeting with, who was very important in the Kentucky bourbon industry, I saw the dollar signs in my partner's eyes just start rolling around. And I knew right then and there that he was going to want to make sourced bourbon whiskey, sourced from Kentucky. And that was not my plan. That has never been my plan. We were always going to make our own juice right here in High, Texas. And that was the plan that he and I were rolling out together. So that developed into a toxic environment between us, a toxic friendship between us, because every single day he would say, this is stupid. Why are we buying stills? This is stupid. Why are we buying corn? Why are we buying mash when we could just go out and get it for $2 a gallon from this guy in Kentucky? And I said, this is what we're going to do. This is what we set out to do. And I stuck to my guns. We ended up getting a divorce, a very terrible divorce. This is the guy who was the godfather of my children, for example. So it was really ugly, and we divorced, and we're still friends today. We've managed to get the relationship back together today. Don't talk very much, but back in those days, it was a disaster. The business from April of 2008 to June of 2008, we didn't produce any bourbon whatsoever, and the distillery was effectively locked until I bought out my partner. And my brother there and my dad and my wife loaned me the money to buy him out and get his sorry ass off the property. And I did. And then I changed the name to Garrison Brothers Distillery. My wife is one of the brothers as well.
The first financial investor brother.
That's correct. Wow. It's still our largest investor today.
Well, that's good. That's nice. It's family. I love these stories about families starting a business together. Well, as long as they stay together.
Nothing creates a robust romance like owing your wife $3 million.
A very good point.
You know, you could say, hey, I'm going to give you that much in love.
Marty, we've never
tried that.
I've never been married, so I don't know if that's even possible.
That shows. That shows.
What?
My going rate,
no,
I think that's
comments like that, Marty.
Process.
Come on now. What about the prostate? Sorry.
No, I said at my current rate for going rate for making love, I'd have to live to about 480 to pay off my debt.
Well. All right, so boys, what's your distillery? Let's talk about your distillery because I really love it. I've been down there a couple times, and I love. I mean, that's how many acres do you have there?
I have 8 My wife actually owns 145 acres on the other side of the road, and someday we might expand into that other side for barrel barn storage. But we just built a 22,000 square foot barrel barn on the property, which is the largest barrel storage unit in all of Texas. We just installed a 2,000 gallon pot still called the Big Johnson about a year ago. So we doubled down on our capacity, and we're about to double down again because we just installed a heat exchanger that will heat up the beer before it goes to the Big Johnson. So we'll be able to do a night shift and a day shift on the Big Johnson, effectively doubling our production capacity. So the distillery is cool. It's a lot of fun. We have tours 10, noon, 2, and 4 on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We have built a restaurant on site called the Whiskey Shack, which is outstanding. Our chef, Jack McDonald, has people coming and lining up to get food on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The tours are an education in themselves, and you'll meet every single person that's involved in the process, and they will tell their story. And it's the funnest part for me is our culture that we've created out there, because when I see young Jack Heikkinen, who I hired basically out of college, he went to Schreiner University down in Kerrville and came right out of college. And today that guy stands up and he says, "This is my kitchen and this is how I do it. Don't mess it up while you're here." Let's say that to the tourists that are coming. That's how proud he is of what he does. So I love my people. We've got a great culture.
Well, when I was there, it just struck me that you had a lot of veterans.
Yes, sir.
And there was a lot of, you had American flags. I think Leonard Skinner was playing in the still house. And then you go into the mash room, and you have patches from all the military folks.
It's called the Wall of American Badass. And if you're in a combat unit, you served in the Army, the Marines, Coast Guard, Air Force, Navy, or for a local police unit or municipal police effort, or firemen, they all get to put their patch up on our wall, and we give them a Garrison Brothers patch in exchange, and we give them all discounted merchandise, friends and family pricing on our bourbon and on T-shirts and hats and that sort of thing.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I loved it.
I bourbon for a living, so the bottom line is, without those guys, we wouldn't get to do this. So it's just a no-brainer. We're the luckiest people on earth, and personally in the greatest country on earth. So proud of it.
Yeah, that's great. I think at least at that point, a lot of your guys were vets, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
They are. We military folks get a nod, and it doesn't even matter if they come back suffering from PTSD or if they're angry at society for their service in Iraq or Afghanistan. Those are the ones we target. If somebody comes back with a chip on their shoulder from overseas, we want them on our team, because we're going to convert them into part of our family, and they'll be loyal for life.
Yeah, it's nice. Texas. That's what I love about Texas. Illinois, not so much.
The whole unabashedness of it. They're right open about it. Shit, the rest of us only think about maybe. Yeah.
No. I think that's just it. And that's why I love the atmosphere there. Plus, you feel like you're in Texas. That whole, I don't know if you call it a ranch. It's not a ranch. It's not like you don't have any animals there, do you?
We actually
cared a lot about the rattlesnakes.
I like the rattlesnakes.
Care a lot about that.
We have a ranch that has a ground lease on our property, so we run about 30 Black Angus cattle on the property. I have a farm a couple of miles away, and I'm raising 3 Longhorns on the farm. So that's become my pride and joy lately, is working with them. But the veterans issues is really important to us because so many of our staff did serve in some capacity. So in 2017, we realized that we could do a bourbon dinner, and people I could pass a hat around at the bourbon dinner and say, "Hey, we're going to give this money to a local charity that's important to us," and people would fill this hat with dollars, sometimes $700 to $1,000. So in 2017, we decided that good bourbon can help us raise money for important causes. All we do is mark up the price of a dinner. It's usually $100. We make it $125, and people are more than willing. They're happy to contribute to charity to help people out. So we formed a public charity, a 501c3 public charity called Good Bourbon for a Good Cause. And if you go to @Good Bourbon Good Cause, That's our Venmo handle, and you can make a donation there. And the primary, there's four goals underneath the Good Bourbon for a Good Cause umbrella. One is to help veterans reacclimate into society after they've returned home from service. The second element is to take care of wide open spaces. We're currently concentrating on Balmorhea State Park, which is out in West Texas. It's the largest spring-fed swimming hole in North America, and it's beautiful, built by the Civilian Conservation Corps in 1935, and we're raising money to rebuild that. We've already spent $100,000 on that. We've spent $100,000 on veterans causes. The other issue that we're worried about is hospitality industry, healthcare for hospitality industry, because it doesn't exist. Very few restaurants and bars and hotels are able to provide benefits to their employees. They make a tip, they get tips, and that's what they live off of. And if they break a leg or get hurt or get sick, they're in deep shit. So we're going to create a healthcare for hospitality workers program. We already have. We've donated over $400,000 to out-of-work restaurant workers who lost their jobs during COVID. And we've done that in the past 2 years as part of it. The last focus area for us is local causes right here in our community. If someone gets sick, we will pay their medical bills. If a local farmer gets wiped out because of a drought or a freeze, we'll buy all of his vegetables so that he can stay.
Wow.
So that's what Good Bourbon for a Good Cause is all about. We've got $100,000 in the bank right now. We're going to have $1 million in the bank by the end of the year.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
It's good work.
That's more than Lou's ever done.
That is more than I've ever done.
Yeah. I always throw it at Lou. Liz, she does her part by selling bandanas.
I think actually just on that note, there is a link to your website so people can access that through your website as well.
Yes, you can go to goodbourbonforagoodcause.org or .com. And also if you go to our website, garrisonbros.com, you can link to Good Bourbon for a Good Cause as well.
Yeah. Green box, bottom of the screen. Check it out.
We'd appreciate it. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Can you sell direct now in Texas?
We cannot.
No, not yet. No.
We're allowed to sell 2 bottles to a customer from our gift shop every 30 days, and that's all we can sell.
We have to check the license and mark it off and the whole nine. It's a very tedious process to sell.
Wow.
Absolutely.
What if I were to come in wearing different hats, mustaches, glasses,
Driver's license.
different driver's license? I come in using Liz's driver's license, right? And I say I identify as Liz Rhoades. Sorry, prove me wrong.
I mean,
When we do
the
our release,
TABC is watching, so of course they would say, no, we can't do that for you.
I will say though, when we do our releases, it's awesome. We'll get a line of cars that's 2 or 3 miles long,
Oh my
waiting
God.
to the gates when we open up our releases. And my favorite part of them is half the time they look like those clown cars. You cannot believe how many people can fit in a car with their driver's licenses so they can each get their 2 bottles. It is awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Well, and then you. Oh, go ahead, Liz. Were you gonna say something?
I was just going to segue back to the bourbon, but if you had another, okay,
No, you go. I think that's where I was going. Go ahead.
Yeah.
awesome, we're on the same page. So let's get back to bourbon. So you said you were inspired by Buffalo Trace, but how did you go about putting kind of the Texas stamp on your bourbon? And the second part of the question is, now that a lot of other Texas distilleries have come on board and they're creating bourbon as well, do you think there's sort of a Texas bourbon identity, or is it pretty diverse?
Hey, I'm sorry.
Take this in any order you want.
Sorry about that.
Some of the contestants, what time do you call over?
I'll be done in about 10 minutes. Thanks. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm supposed to be on stage for this.
This never happened to Tom Snyder. Back in the day.
Liz,
Go down again.
it's funny how Marty and Lou all ask the cheesy, humorous questions. You always ask the specific, purposeful questions or meaningful.
What she's here for.
We planned it out that way, Dan.
You can see where the depth is in this field. I'm going to have to go in just a few minutes, but I do want to answer your question, Liz, and that is that we are unabashedly Texan. We are so proud of what we do. We our our creative brief for our advertising agency when we go out and say create ads that portray what we're all about. The entire theme was swagger. It's all about swagger. Do we have swagger? Are we confident? Do we know what we're doing? Do we lead from the front? We have to lead from the front, and we don't care who's behind us. We don't care who else is making good whiskey behind us. We just have to make the best, and if we're not making the best, it's not going to market. So that's what we're all about. If you look at our bottle, it's got the Texas Lone Star right there, prominently displayed, the metal star right on the front of the bottle. The star is stamped into the wax on the top of the bottle. Everything we try to convey is confidence in our product and our people and our brand. So that's I don't think it gets more Texan than that.
You know, but to sort of take that to that next level, the bottom line about everything that we've done is to try to be honest. Dan didn't go with his original partner because the objective was to make a lowlands bourbon. What was a bourbon from Texas going to look like, right? And everybody else was BSing it. So there was all this bourbon in Texas that wasn't Texas bourbon. So it's taken a very long time to get the word out that what we're making is Texas bourbon whiskey. It's not a package. It's not a brand. It is really Texas bourbon whiskey. The other part of that is we don't care how much it costs to make bourbon whiskey. I am convinced that Donis Todd, our master distiller, I'm convinced he wakes up every freaking morning of his life and says, how do I make bourbon more expensively than I did yesterday? I swear I think that's his mission. But the bottom line is that gives us swagger. I can walk into any bar in America, put my bottle down, and I can look anyone in the eye and say, no one's spending more, trying harder to make better bourbon whiskey than this. And we have an identity now. We are true and honest and hard. And our brand is blown up so much that we've kind of blown out of Texas. You know, we're the number one selling ultra premium, whatever category that means. I think it's 35 or 40 bucks up in the state of Texas. And now we're the number one selling $70 and up. Don't quote me on these numbers, but I think I'm right. $70 and up bourbon in the country. You know, I mean, it's the bourbon that's selling the bottle. The bottle's just a cool package that says who we are. But that bourbon, Donis Todd, knowing that he's the guy making that bourbon, I can sell it anywhere. I don't worry about sales in the slightest right now. Not at all.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I unfortunately have to go host this bartending competition. They're knocking on my door. So thank you for having me on. I'll let Charles take over from here. Liz, so nice to meet you. You're awesome.
Nice to meet you.
Marty, not so much. See you.
Thanks for joining us.
So now I start
And
making
right
fun of
off
Dan.
into the sunset. Don't let a mule hurt you or anything.
I'll tell you what, this is kind of, when you wonder what my job is, this is it. Dan starts something and then he wanders away. And I sit there going, okay. So
That's all right.
Because I can start telling lies and he can't back it up. He can't argue against it.
Well, Charlie, we do
Let's ask
have
some really
your-
simple ones. What whiskeys are there? Can we just run through the?
What do we
Yeah, explain the different
Yeah.
different offerings.
We had
Lee was
two
asking about
questions
that.
around that as well.
So
Yeah.
everything we make on the ranch.
Oh my God, he's leaving too.
Yeah.
No, just grab it a bottle. Everything we make on the ranch is small batch bourbon, right? Donis Todd gets up every single day and makes small batch bourbon. From there, he'll start pulling barrels. So all Garrison Brothers is 74% corn. It's a white corn. It's 15% soft red winter wheat and 11% barley. That is Garrison Brothers. There was one exception to that I'm aware of. There's probably 50 exceptions to that Donis is doing around the ranch. But there's one
Yeah.
that he did in such a big way called we called it High Rye, and that was a rye bourbon whiskey, but it sold out immediately, and it was meant for fun. HYERY.
Yeah.
Oh, cute. They're so cute. But so everything we make on the ranch is small batch bourbon. And then every single Monday, he'll pull X number of barrels to dump for that small batch, right? And as he's pulling barrels, he'll get profiles that he gets excited about. And those are what he'll direct towards, whether it's our Balmoral bourbon, which is a double oaked bourbon, or whether it's our single barrel bourbon. If he gets a barrel that's just flat out fun, but doesn't fit the profile that he wants from small batch, he is the palate. There is no, it's Donna's top, right? So he is the company in my book. And so if he gets to something that is maybe has a really strong characteristic, whether it's cinnamon or vanilla or whatever that may be, he'll set that aside and he'll barrel that individually as a single barrel, right? And then from there, if he gets to one that has a huge vanilla content, he may steer that towards what he calls Laguna Madre, which is a French limousine oak finished double-barreled Garrison Brothers, or Honeydew. If the barrels have a natural honey characteristic, then he'll start steering that towards our Honeydew product. That's just how he thinks. And what's great about this is over the years, he started to learn, he's been at it illegally for probably close to 20 years now, right? And so we had a huge head start over craft distilling. Donis was out there cranking out with Dan. Dan was sweating in buckets for a long time, but Donis brought what's called intelligence. And so with Donis, over the years, he started to really learn about his barrels. And so now he has barrels made in specific ways with Laguna Madre in mind, with Balmoral in mind, with the different characteristics and profiles in mind. But a lot of those we don't know yet. We won't know for another 4 or 5 years. These are things we're doing now. So it's just it's a different program. But basically what we carry, our brand lineup is our small batch, which we sell in the 375s. And then we also sell it in a boot flask because I'm a college football junkie and I've got to be able to smuggle our bourbon into college football games. And Dan likes to take it with him to church. But the small batch comes in the boot flask in the 750. From there, we do one called Honeydew. Honeydew is a actual honey finished bourbon. But again, when you're drinking, please don't dismiss me yet. I know we just made a honey finished bourbon. I know that means I'm going to hell. All right. I get it. I understand what honey bourbon is. But what I ask is try it because we're dumb. Our honey bourbon starts as our small batch. It is not an inferior distillate. It is our small batch bourbon that Donis finishes by spending as much money as he can to infuse a little bit of honey into it. And then from there, we go over to our single barrels. We do single barrels two-way. We do a 94 proof, which is what our small batch is proofed. We use rainwater to proof all our bourbon. There aren't the herbicides or pesticides in rainwater. We think it changes the flavor the least. And our well water in Texas, in the hill country, smells like rotten eggs. So if we proofed it with it, you wouldn't drink it. So we do 94 proof single barrel, and then we do barrel proof single barrel, which we're out of for a long time. So please don't call me and say I need a single barrel because I don't have any. And then we do Balmoral.
Do you do any barrel picks like with stores or clubs?
We did so many of them. We could have sold all of our brand just in single barrels.
Wow.
It's been crazy. And my wife has a dream of shoes and a future and such. And as long as Dan is my boss, and he is, I will never reach that end zone because Dan's going to spend more money than we take in to make fancier bourbon. That is what he'll do forever. And my wife realized it a couple of years ago, and that's that. So it's just, this is a journey, not an end zone. But But so the Balmoral real quick, because I want to get through that. Somebody was yelling. I think it was my old frat brother that was looking at me about, I can't believe he's still there. But the different brands. So Balmoral is our small batch, but then it's finished in a second brand new oak barrel that Donis has specifically made for certain flavor characteristics. And that's 115 proof, and it's got a blue wax on it, and it's bourbon candy. It finishes absolutely with a sweetness that is just hard to explain. From there we go to the high rye, which is gone and probably will be gone for the rest of my life. And then we go to, where am I? Laguna Madre. Laguna Madre is 4 years, or 3 or 4 years is our small batch, and another 4 years, give or take, is our in French Limousine oak that Donis has found specifically for its vanilla content. And then finally we got to Guadalupe, and Guadalupe is our newest one we're releasing. Donis went out and managed to hunt down a bunch of actual port barrels from Portugal, and he's finished our small batch in those port barrels, and the color on it is unreal. I haven't had a chance to drink it yet, but you can bet I'm going to be down at the distillery this weekend when it releases.
Well, now are all these available in those 40 different markets, or is it mostly just at the distillery?
We try to get, so we release Balmorhea and Honeydew every quarter. And I do that because I don't want people to collect it. I want people to drink it. So we release it quarterly. I get some good scoldings on that. Oh, geez.
Who's a big proponent of drinking whiskey?
Yes, we like drinking it.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention our Cowboy Bourbon, which is hysterical because that's what got us on the map. Our Cowboy Bourbon is the other release we do. It's our small batch bourbon, but Donis has barrels that are simply his favorite barrels on the ranch. And he'll take those barrels and hide them from my brother and I, so we won't drink them. And then he'll let it age for a couple more years. I lose anywhere from 10 to 14% a year to angel share. Think about that. That's unreal, right? And our barrels have to get custom made for us in order to handle our climate. So when he dumps a barrel of Cowboy, it's usually in the 130 to 140 proof range. It's not uncommon he'll get 10 bottles out of an entire barrel, but it's the oldest bourbon on our ranch, and it's his favorite bourbon on our ranch. And that one also is a one-time release a year. It sells out kind of instantly.
Well, Charlie, do you lay the barrels down when you mature them, or are you palletizing them?
We're doing both. We don't follow rules.
Then you might want to look at an episode from a couple of weeks ago, the Scotch Bonnet. It's created by a guy in Scotland for palletized barrels and casks. You put it on top, and it reduces the angel share.
Yeah, no, Donis is doing that.
50%, I think, was the math.
50%.
Yeah, Donis has got a bunch of these palletized now. But just to make sure that we understand the pecking order of this, if I were to make a suggestion to Donis Todd, I would be forcibly removed from the ranch. So Donis does what Donis does, and then I run around trying to figure out how to sell it. That's our business relationship. I'm afraid of him. He's twice my size. He's smarter than me.
Yeah, so, he's a big guy. Does he still have the big beard?
Yeah, sometimes it comes and goes like once a week.
Like a chia pet? Yeah, he
once
just
a week.
Like a chia pet.
And going back to the, truly Texas bourbon, you are working with a lot of local farmers as well. I think with the white corn and the wheat as well as the honey. I think I saw.
No, all of our grain comes out of Texas, and it's all food grade grains. So we're spending a fortune on our grain, and that was a mistake. A lot of this was a mistake. At one point, we started out trying to use yellow dent like most of Kentucky, right? It's much more affordable grain. But at one point, our co-op that we were using at the time, called Def Smith, up in the Panhandle of Texas, sent us a bunch of Panhandle white corn, which was psycho expensive. So we tried it, and we said, guys, you sent us the wrong corn, and they said it's too expensive to ship back. Just use that corn, and we'll ship you the right stuff next time. And we did, and as soon as Donis tasted the distillate, he was like, "No, we're never going back." So our grains are very, very expensive grain to use. We don't our distiller's beer. The whole experience for us was just kind of a magical learning curve. When we started fermenting our mash, right, our distiller's beer would become 10+% alcohol, sometimes as high as 13% alcohol.
Nice.
And it turns out that the guys in Kentucky that sort of coached Dan through all this knew it was going to happen. Our ranch is on limestone, but Kentucky's limestone is much older than ours. So their limestone is much more compacted, right? Ours is much younger, so it's softer. So when water runs through Kentucky's limestone, the minerals get stripped out of that water and you end up with a beautiful, beautiful water for drinking, fermenting, or whatever. On our farm, when the water runs through our limestone, the minerals get pulled out of the water. And it turns out that those minerals actually act like nutrients for the yeast. So it keeps our yeast alive longer. So we end up with a higher proof beer. Then we pump that beer over to the stills. And early on, Dan had a real black and white view of everything, just like not sourcing bourbon, right? Sourcing bourbon would have made him a very rich man because no one was doing it in Texas. He would have been the first, right? But Dan's so proud of bourbon. It's the only thing he's ever made in period ever, right? And so when he got to the idea of sour mashing, he just had a simple theory that I don't reuse my coffee grounds. I don't want to reuse my grain. And so the perk of that is that we didn't have that consistency early on, right? Sour mashing adds some consistency to the process. So the idea is it never had that consistency, and it enabled us to learn faster. I think our learning curve was a lot faster than many. But the flip side of it is I use a third more grain than just about anybody else now. And our grain's bloody expensive, right? And then when we're done, we keep a very small percentage of our distillate compared to most distilleries. And then it goes into custom cut barrels that are thicker, dry aged wood. And those barrels, we're in and out of them at this breakneck pace because, January and February in Kentucky, it's freezing. August, it's 90. On our ranch, in the morning, it's 100 degrees. That night, it might be 50. So I'm in and out of these barrels at this insane rate. And all of those things combined gave us the ability to speed up our learning curve. We knew when we were making terrible bourbon years before other people did. And we made a ton of terrible bourbon, right? I don't care what anybody says. If you get a still, the first thing you do is you print a business card that says Master Distiller, and it should say rookie or newbie or something like that. You're going to make bourbon. It's inevitable. It is such a hard thing to learn. And fortunately, Donis has been there since day one. He's a magical guy. I can't say enough about that guy.
Where did he learn his distilling skills? Where'd you guys find Donis?
I've heard a dozen stories about it. And over the years, I've told these stories to where I don't know which one of those I believe anymore because I make stuff up so much. But as I understand it, his grandfather may have had a pretty cool still out in Ohio at one point. And he might have learned on that as he was a kid growing up.
There is a huge Ohio moonshining tradition, and nobody talks about it or knows about it.
I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
I didn't until I started studying, sort of this business and it's amazing. It's really fun.
It really is.
Hell of a story to tell.
Yeah.
And there's distilleries out there now making good juice.
Yeah. There's that Netflix movie about Ohio hillbillies. I think it's called Hillbilly Eulogy. Yeah, with Glenn Close and
okay.
And
I realized that was in Ohio.
When I first heard it, I didn't know it was about Ohio either until I started watching. I go, really? Ohio? I never thought of Ohio as.
I'll tell you, the Southeast, man.
Well, of course.
So, seriously, Southeast of Ohio. That's hill country.
Oh, the Southeast. I thought you meant
yeah.
U.S.
Raymond Mendoza, who's just an awesome Garrison Brothers loyalist and friend, just said to ask Charlie who the better looking brother is.
Yeah.
So I'm the kid brother, right? I'm 2 years younger than Dan. He is now my damn boss. By the way, I got out of college in 4 damn years. I did everything I was supposed to do. He spent 6 years getting his undergrad degree, and now he owns a distillery and I work for him. So if there's any question about bitterness, it's there. It's deeply rooted. But so as a kid brother, I spend my entire life trying to piss off Dan, and I've gotten pretty good at it. So the tagline in my email my title is Whiskey Peddler and Better Looking Brother. So there you go. Answer your question, right?
Adonis has a full barrel of whiskey. He just asked you to come over, dip your finger in it, give it that little extra bitterness. Bitterness.
Yeah, there's plenty of it.
Andy Davidson, formerly of Glencairn fame, who came down to the distillery that one time. He says hello to you both. Well, to you. And then, but he also offered this. He's now living, going to go to school in Alabama. So he'll be around. Big, tall, lanky Scottish guy in Alabama. He's going to
no one will understand him.
Like a sore thumb. But he was thinking, he deals a lot with European glass, and he said he found a bottle he thought would be perfect for you guys. Will you bring this up?
This is not going to go well for me. Oh God!
So that is made in Hungary. That is a scoped rifle full of whiskey.
Wow.
Yeah, that's Andy. Even though he looks like he's 12, that guy's like 6'4". And 36 years old.
I am pretty sure, given time, we could retrofit that thing to make it work.
I gotta say,
he loves it. He thinks it's great.
That is fun. That's awesome.
So that option is out there for you.
They come with a holster as well.
A holster for that?
Bandolier. There you go.
Yeah, you want to see that?
These are shot glasses in the bandolier.
I've always wanted to be one of those folks that goes into a bar with a bandolier full of shots with no shirt on, but everybody says it would be bad for our brand.
Yeah, shirt idea.
Yeah.
Anyways, that would chafe. Those would chafe.
Whoa, leather vest. Just a leather vest. How's that? Huh?
Yeah. Very macho.
I mean, people love that look on me.
So, Charlie, can you tell us about your stills? How big are they?
We've got 4 of them. So we've got a little 100-gallon pot still. At one point, that still was used by Elmer T. Lee when he was doing his Blanton's recipes. Yeah, see, I knew that'd get Lou. I saw his expression perk up. Yeah, Mr. Lee, according to legend, really encouraged Dan in this process. He was a big fan of what Dan was trying to do. And so that we've got that one. And then we had 2 more that we're very classy people, but we've got 2 500-gallon pot stills that we call Fat Man and Little Boy. And we think they are awesome displays of American night. And we crank out a lot of bourbon on those.
Are they
and now
squat?
we got the Big Johnson, which is a 2,000-gallon pot still.
That's why you asked the question, isn't it, Marty? You just wanted to give him another opportunity to say Big Johnson.
The Big
Johnson. He's walking us right into it. Yeah. He knows I'm too slow to realize these are things you don't say on the air.
The Big Johnson.
Yeah.
We also have the Schwanz. That's another.
That's
the crank is over there.
Yeah.
You can tell this distillery is full of nothing but guys.
Yeah, right.
Don't go there. The lady should be in that still house.
Donis just basically engineered a reboiler that we think is going to allow us to run the Big Johnson 24/7, 2 runs a day, and that arrived yesterday, and we're making a lot of bourbon. We just built a 22,000 square foot barrel barn. It's a football field and a half long. It just brings a tear to my eye because I'll never forget, guys, a couple of million years ago, Dan dragging me out to this piece of land that he didn't own, walking around, dragging his foot through the dirt and saying, here's going to be the still house. And I'd go, what's a still house? And he's like, we don't know yet. And then he ran over and showed me where the first barrel barn was going to be. And 17 years later, it's all there. What was in that guy's demented brain is exactly what's there today. It's every time I pull up, I just shake my head going, oh my God, man. It was the worst business plan. The business plan basically said, if we do everything right, first of all, we need to borrow $5.5 million. Dan and I didn't have any money. We grew up broke. And So we needed to borrow $5.5 million. And if everything went to plan, and I don't know how many of you guys have started businesses, I've started several of them. They don't go to plan, right? But if everything went to plan, we could start paying our investors back in 12 years. Do you know how many banks would look at you and go, that's just adorable, get out? Because I do, there's a bunch of them. But my God, he pulled it off, milked his poor wife for every nickel the gal had, but he pulled it off, and it's there. And now I pulled it up. You know, we just finished the giant barrel barn. We call it the dance hall 2 weeks ago. And you pull up and you see this, and Donis is going to have that sucker filled, football field and a half, and he'll have it filled in probably 18 months.
Wow.
That will be more bourbon.
Johnson.
Yeah, that'll be more bourbon than we've probably made.
One Big Johnson.
I mean, think
But
about
didn't you have a problem a few years back where you guys had got distribution in a number of markets, but then found out you didn't have enough product you had to pull back at one point, that you were kind of overextended yourselves. But now that doesn't sound like the problem now, huh?
No, we're selling what we make. We're on fortunately, we've been making more every year for a long time. So we're able to grow, but yeah. So in about 2015, probably maybe 16, Dan brought me on board and said, "I'll pay you in bourbon." My wife was a school teacher. We lived off of her salary in a sub shop that was failing, and we started selling. And so we added Arizona, and because that's where I live now, and California, and people started buying it, and it was just too damn easy. And the next thing I know, we're looking around, and we had outsold our pace of production, and we were in deep trouble. And so we had to retrench, really buckle down, started learning. 2018, we hired on some really smart people that basically very politely said, if you two will just stop talking, just for a minute, stop talking and let us grow this business. So they did, and they did it logically. And now we just keep making more bourbon, and it's never been an issue about selling it. It's always been an issue about letting Donis make it. He tells us when it's ready. I don't go by age statements. It's not important. It's whenever Donis says this is ready or that's ready, that's what we sell. And we think we're on a fairly well-managed trajectory now.
You know what I'd like to see? Because, you guys are the Garrison brothers. You're Dan and Charlie. You got the Blum brothers out of Galena. You got the Licorice brothers there in Texas as well. You got the DePrizio Leopold brothers. DePrizio brothers here in Chicago. There's a number. The Nelson brothers out of Nashville. Nelson's Greenbrier. I would like to see you guys all come together, vat your whiskeys together, and just call it Brothers. Boom. Idea, yours. Take it. Go ahead. Run with it.
I tell you what, can you just run that through the legal system first?
They do that. I mean, what was that? Four Kings? That was always being released here in Chicago?
Yeah.
There was a labeling problem with that.
Well, they did it. They did it every year.
Yeah.
The good guys.
Very
Vatted
bad
malt.
problem.
Oh, yeah.
What, Liz? What was that?
Good guys, vatted malt. That's
Yeah, hello. That's right. See?
multiple plates.
You can do it. You
Doable.
can do it.
Our
Charlie,
strength is never been staying within the rules and regs and laws. So right now, we make our bourbon and we sell it. Anything more complicated than that, and I have to start squinting and thinking, and never been something I'm good at.
Squinting and thinking.
Can I ask you something? You were talking about the barrels earlier. Can we talk a little more about that?
Sure. Try.
First off, are we talking all 53s?
No, we use all sorts of different sizes. Donis is
Okay.
a lot of what he's ordered in the last couple of years has been 53s. He uses, if you get a Kelvin barrel, it's usually a 27 when you think it's a 30. But the different cooperages have different sized barrels that we use for different things. You know, he still orders some 15s. He's got a bunch of 27s and 30s. I think he's got 24s out there. We use different cooperages. We're not bound to a cooperage. So we've got Barrel Mill, we've got, you know, Black Swan, we've got Kelvin. I think he's getting some out of a cooperage in Arkansas now. Honest to God, he within some degree of sanity, he does what he wants, and you know, he's so smart. He's been there so long that his charge is not to just make small batch bourbon. It's to make it better. Whatever he thinks he needs to do to make that continually evolve to the best bourbon he can make, that's what he does. So if he feels like a new cooperage or a different char or any of those things, nobody's going to tell Don what to do.
Sounds like from what you were describing earlier about some of the whiskeys, it sounds like he's also playing around with some different toasts or seasonings as well.
He does that. Yeah, he does. I was out there 2 months ago, and all the barrels started coming in with different. I hope I'm not volunteering something he's up to, but different intentions for him. So the barrels are coming in, and he has, as it's made, this is a honeydew barrel. This is going to be a Balmoral barrel. So I think he's learned so much about which barrels are aging in which ways that he's got it. It's not that barrel will become, he's not that regimented. He'll do what he wants, but he may bring in a barrel with a mindset that he wants that barrel to one day be Balmoral. And if he likes it 5 years from now or 6 years or whatever he's choosing, then it'll be that. It's kind of fun. It's an evolution. There isn't an end zone. Dan's mission statement's to make the best bourbon in the world. And for 5 years, we were pegged as, that's a really good Texas bourbon. And then, like I said, 2018, I think the world started saying, that's a really good bourbon. And it blew us up. You know, I mean, all of a sudden, we just woke up one morning and went, oh my God. Dan and I ran around trying to sell it for so long, and it's amazing when you hire smart people, what happens. Just a little humiliating, actually.
See, that is fun, though. I mean, you know, that's interesting because we've talked about this on past shows about how some states, some guilds are creating, you know, their parameters for New York style. Indiana just got their own, you know, their own classification. But, you know, at the same time, almost every brand eventually, if you're taking off, you want to actually escape those labels. Even the big brands, like when I worked for Johnny Walker, they were marketing it as a global brand. They stopped really pushing the whole. Originally we wore kilts, then they said ditch the kilts, wear a suit.
Yeah, you know? No. So this sticker right here, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's certified Texas, right?
Certified. Texas.
Gotta get it over here. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you guys said you'd be coming to Texas soon. Look for the distilleries that are doing certified Texas. What that means is the grains are Texas. It's distilled in Texas. I don't want to make a law that says bourbon in Texas needs to be like this. I don't want that. You know, I'm sure there's plenty of smart people that do, and that's great. But I just want to have a certain character and integrity that is Texas whiskey. And I think right now there's an army of distillers in Texas. We were the first legal whiskey ever distilled in Texas. We damn sure weren't the first whiskey distilled in Texas, right? And now, the last time I looked, I want to say there were 160 distilleries in Texas. And a ton of them are making real Texas whiskeys. Maybe not bourbons, but they're making real Texas whiskeys. And I'm starting to see some characteristics that light me up, that really excite me. But Texas is a huge place. So to say Texas bourbon is this, you know, I think it'd be a boneheaded thing to do. We got West Texas, we got East Texas. To say those two would make the same bourbon is absurd.
Right. Well, I was going to say resources in Texas. Texas is so big. I read this once. that you could take the entire population of the world and have them stand in Texas. All 7 billion people can stand in Texas. No laying down, no sitting down. Stand
still have
kind
room
of
for
close.
Martians, maybe?
Huh? This is in
Still
case
have room for all
Martians
the
want to
Martians?
just come in and take us all out at once. But that's how big freaking Texas is. I once drove from Paso to Dallas, and I swear I fell asleep on the way there, and I was driving.
Oh man.
It was forever. West Texas.
It actually makes sense, Texas bourbon, because I know you guys seem to take your corn really seriously down there.
Corn and wheat. Yeah, we're real proud of our corn. We're real proud of our. I mean, and it is funny. We are. It's we get all. Sorry, butthurt is the term. When you get some great corn from another state, it hurts me. I'm like, damn, how good. Texas wants to be.
I'm a little cry in the corner.
My personal source of pride this week is both of these, both Musk and Bezos. They launched their rockets from Texas, right? What the hell's wrong with me? Why do I need that? But it matters. There's a certain crazy that comes with being from Texas that's just swagger, and half the time it's unjustified swagger, but it's still swagger. It's the reason I got to do that when I was a kid.
I think you guys have something more to rest this on. Just the aging conditions and the growing conditions make a real difference. Just like when we were talking to the people from Wyoming, the people from High Plains, Colorado, the people from Montana, you've got a real difference there. You're at the high altitude, it's dry. It makes a difference in how distilling goes. It obviously makes a difference in how aging goes. And I think those are real differences. And some of these other ones are legal differences, and it's not as solid. But
you guys
are going to have a difference whether you say it or not.
East Texas,
Houston to High Texas. Those you can't make the same juice there. Those are two different, entirely different places. So even within Texas,
you have the influence of the Gulf down there. You have the ocean, but you also have the desert. You have forests out in the east. It's all very more farmland up.
I mean, for God's sake, the Texans are different. Whiskey's certainly going to be different.
A fun thing to know, when phylloxera wiped out the vineyards in France back in the 1870s, where did they get their new vines?
Texas.
From North Texas.
Yeah,
really?
That's right.
I did not know that.
Well, you should interview me sometime. I'll fill you up with loads of interesting
information. Sound good.
Don't interview me. All you'll hear is a bunch of lies.
Unreliable assumption.
Loads of facts.
I did just do an educational tasting with Hennessy last week, and they actually admitted about the phylloxera. I thought that was,
nice.
Yeah, fairly honest.
Well, Denison, Texas is the sister city to Cognac.
Because of that. How about that?
Hello, Marty Duffy laying down some facts.
Learning from Marty every day.
Could we ask you pop culture questions and you could fire those off as well?
You know what's more interesting? Asking Liz.
Oh, you're one?
No. That was me saying Marty. Putting to Marty.
No, I think it's a lot more fun looking at Liz just kind of go, what? Indiana Jones? Who?
I've seen Indiana Jones.
Yeah, an amusement park, maybe. Some guy from Indiana named Jones. So anyways, Charlie, we are Lou and I we brought this up a couple months ago. We are gonna try to reestablish going down. Liz wants to come along, but I think she needs a little trailer behind with a lab so she can do her work while we pull her along. But I think we should do the Texas Distillery Trail. I think I got one of the maps. I was in Houston recently.
Yeah.
What's in the book?
Got to sell the book. That's what it's all about. Got to sell the book.
Oh, by the way, Charlie, do you have this book?
Which cover are you holding? Is this Lou's new book?
This is Lou's
Nah,
newest
Lou's
book,
old book.
Whiskey Masterclass.
Well, why don't we go
And there are some fascinating people who are acknowledged in the back of it. Boom. Lou's too, but mostly me. Whole paragraph. Now, Charlie, are you going to be part of any of the new bourbon? A lot of bourbon events coming up. A lot of whiskey events in general.
I wake up and look at my calendar and say, what am I supposed? Like I said, we hired smart people, and they have not. I don't make decisions. I simply am told this is what you need to do. It works so much. I learned it from my wife when we got married 27 years ago. That things can work if I just don't get involved. So that's I think that's my message to the next generation. Just don't get involved with anything, and it might work out. Yeah,
Just let it happen.
I retain what I call mild veto.
No, I am. I'm headed all over the place.
Every now and then I say no, and sometimes it takes.
Well, Lou and I don't know, Liz, are you going down? No, you're not going to be in town. We're going to be at New Orleans Bourbon Festival.
Yeah.
Coming up in just a few weeks, mid-August. And then ADI. And then Louisville is the big bourbons, Bardstown, the big bourbon festival in late September.
Yep.
I want to say that I'm headed to Bardstown. I think that Shane, I don't know if you guys have met Shane Merriam. He's a nut. He's I don't even know what he calls himself, a bourbon provocateur, but he basically just travels around and talks bourbon and does events, and he's just a hoot. But I'm pretty sure he's going to be in Louisiana.
That sounds like a lot of folks. Actually, that describes a lot of people now.
Shane has bought more friends faster than any human I know. He shows up at a bar, he buys a bunch of drinks. He never sleeps and he never goes home. He's got, it's a pretty good gig. He seems to.
Yeah,
pretty good gig as long as you're alive.
Yeah.
That's the tough part, but can be done. Can be done.
Is the distillery open for tourism right now? Everything. Well, of course, it's Texas. Everything is open.
Wide open, man. Wide open. So come visit us. We do tours Tuesdays through Saturdays, 10 noon, 2 and 4. And it's go to the website and sign up. They always book out. We'll do 40 to 50,000 tourists this year. So go to the website and sign up for the time. And sorry, I just noticed where's a wig. How did I not notice that the entire time? I
changed it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
you changed yours too, right, Liz?
I did, yeah. I followed her lead because I'm like, yeah, me too.
Because it's a great place. I mean, it's funny too. High Texas, if I remember correctly, it was a bit of a drive. I think we were staying in Austin at the time, and it was a bit of a drive out there. So if you're getting 40 to 50,000, that's a dedicated group.
We're near a wine trail, the Texas wine trail. Back to what you were saying earlier, Lou. So there's a lot of different things to do out there now. But it's about an hour and a half. Dan claims it's an hour, but don't drive with Dan. But it's not, from Austin or San Antonio, it's about an hour to an hour and a half drive. So it's not far. And it's once you see the place, I think you understand what we're about. It's a different, very, very absurd way to make bourbon. It's an expensive beyond belief way to make bourbon, but it'll never change. That's how we're going to make bourbon.
Well, I love it. It's one of my most favorite distilleries because it's a real experience going out there.
I mean, Marty, you've been around for a while, so I'm not saying
I'm in my 90s.
Yeah, but you've seen some distilleries in your day.
I have. I helped Glenfiddich start up back in the 1880s.
You've been telling me about your liver for a long time.
My liver has its own house.
On that note, again, thank you so much, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
Dan, if you're listening to this later on, again, everyone, green box at the bottom of the screen, check out their website. Moving ahead to next Tuesday, we'll have Chad Perkins and Sarah Algrem. I know I pronounced that incorrectly. Host of It's Bourbon Time. So come back. It'll be Bourbon Night.
Isn't it Bourbon Night? It's Bourbon Night.
It's bourbon at night, noon. I don't know. It's bourbon.
Bourbon time.
First question.
So thanks, Charlie.
Charlie, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The
Good show.
blast as always, gang. I appreciate your time. Yes, salute.
Cheers,
Cheers.
everyone.
Give
Thanks.
a jingle if you're in Chicago. I'll meet up for a drink.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.